Most RPA projects require a level of UI automation, and in the latest version of the UiPath platform, we have introduced a new way of dealing with UI elements on the screen. We're calling this modern design experience, and it can be enabled at a project level or at a studio level, and obviously it can be governed by the Center of Excellence. When enabled, a number of new capabilities are going to be available to you that I'm going to demonstrate today. One of them is called Object Repository. Now you can think about Object Repository like a database of UI elements that you might want to interact with. And you will see here that they will be available as a tree of elements. So you can have multiple applications, each application can have multiple screens, and so forth. In today's demonstration, I'm going to work with this application. It's a suppliers app where I can see a list of suppliers and I can add new suppliers. And I'm going to go here under Object Repository and actually use this Capture Elements functionality to start populating my repository of objects. So as I do this, I can hit the record button. And now I'm pointing towards the application that I want to capture elements from. Once I pointed, you can see here that I can start pointing towards various elements. For example, I want to interact with this particular button, the new supplier button, or I want to interact with this export CSV button, for example. Okay, and then I'm going to give this screen a name. It's the homepage of my application. And then under the homepage, and actually I'm going to give the application a version as well. So we have homepage, and under homepage, we also have a new supplier screen. Okay, so I will first click the new supplier button. Okay, and then once the button is clicked, I can add the new supplier screen. Okay, we'll call it supplier details because it's the same screen that's being used when editing a supplier. And in this screen, I will start adding new elements. For example, I will add the internal name element. I can also add the external name here. I can add the description. And I will pause for a while just to show you a few things. First of all, when adding new elements, you can see here that we're not only showing, identifying the element that you want to work with, but we're automatically identifying what we call an anchor. And you can think about this as the label of an element. And whenever our product tries to identify at runtime this particular element, it not only uses this target, but it only uses one, or actually you can have multiple anchors for one particular element. Okay, so this actually makes your automation a lot more resilient to app changes. There's applications like Salesforce, SAP Fiori, or any React.js based application where the elements that you're usually interacting with, they change with every page refresh. So with this technique, with working with anchors plus elements, plus, the other thing is this concept of a fuzzy selector. We are able to identify elements even if the application behind the scene has slight changes. So I added three UI elements. Let me add the save button as well, and then also the cancel button. Okay. Now, obviously, I could add a lot more. The other thing to note here is that you see the name of the elements that are being added are automatically taken from the label of the element, because me as a human, this is how I identify this text field. It's not just the text field with the ID text field 281, is actually the external name. So we're taking that into account as we're populating these things. Now that I've added my elements, I will hit save, and this will actually add them here in my automation. And now I want to start building an automation. And the automation that I want to build, what it's going to do is come here on this page and maybe create a new supplier, let's say. So to do that, I will simply, I can actually use the recorder as well, but I just want to highlight a bit of the object repository functionality, right? So I will drag our homepage here, and automatically you can see that a use application browser scope has been added to my automation, meaning that this is what I want to do. I want to work with this particular browser. this particular application. And then under here, I want to click the new supplier button. So I will drag and drop the new supplier element from the object repository. And as I do this, you can see here a list of proposed activities that I can add to interact with that particular element. And you see that being a button, click is the one that we're proposing as the most, as the topmost activity to be used. So I open the browser, I click new supplier, right? And then I will start writing some things. So let's say for internal name, I'm going to type, I don't know, maybe test. And then I will do the same for external name. Okay, again, drag and drop. I will type also test. And then the other thing I want to do is click this save button. Okay, so now I'm clicking the save button. And what this should do is come here, click new supplier, and do all of this. Now, I mentioned a bit of like what do we mean by resilience when we're talking about UI automation. So I want to show you yet another thing that we've introduced in this latest version of our product. When you click a button, for example, this new supplier button, you want to make sure that the click went through. Sometimes, because various reasons, the click might not actually go through. So when I click new supplier, I want to verify that it went through. And how do you verify that? I want to make sure that this window pops up, and I want to make sure, for example, that the save button is going to be visible on the screen. So if I take this new supplier activity, the click new supplier activity, I can come here and say, I want to add a verification. Again, this is also something new. And what I want to verify in my case is that the save button appears. Okay, so verify that button save appears. So this is what this is going to do. When I type something, I want to do something similar because this is a type. We're going to have a different type of verification, and actually we pre-implemented it, and it's going to verify that whatever I wanted to type here is what gets typed. Okay, so if for some reason, I don't know, maybe some characters will be missing, or maybe the focus is not where it should be as we're typing. There's different problems that might appear. What this does is going to actually verify that what we wanted to type is what got typed. And if this is not true, then it's going to repeat this action over and over again until the timeout is reached, trying to retype the same thing again and again. And we're going to do the same thing for the external name, right? Good. Now we have our automation running and working, I think, and it's time to run it. So I'm going to just go ahead and run it. Let's see what it does. It should go and click the new supplier button, start typing in internal name, external name, hit the save button, and everything worked just fine. And we can see here the element that we've just added is present in the list of elements here. Nice. Okay, so far so good. Now, another problem that we've identified with UI automation in general is the fact that sometimes the applications that you're automating, be it a website or a desktop application, sometimes they get upgraded to newer versions. Especially web applications, you never know. You're not in control. They don't run on your computer, right? So they might get upgraded. Maybe you're using I don't know, Salesforce, and they have a new version of Salesforce being deployed. The question is, will my automations against Salesforce, will those still work fine? And it's really hard to tell until you actually run the automations, right? Same thing for desktop applications. Maybe you're automating against, I don't know, Outlook, and then a new version of Outlook has been pushed by IT to your computer. Will the automation still work? So how do you know? Well, with again, latest version of our products, we've introduced the way to create test cases for RPA. What that means is that if you have a specific RPA process running, you can create a test case to test that process runs fine. Okay, and this is exactly what we're going to do here. And what we're going to test is actually we're going to go screen by screen here and make sure that the selectors, the elements that we want to interact with, they will still be working and they will still be on the screen as we do that. Now this is the default way of the test case looks like. And in our case, given this is where you actually go and open the application, set it up the way you wanna work. And this under when I'm going to put the actual tests. Okay, so we're opening our supplier application, and then in here, what I want to do is basically verify that the export CSV button and the new supplier button verify that they are still on the screen and their selectors, the way we identify them, is still valid. And to do that, I will add a verify control attribute, okay, because we want to see that a control is on the screen. And then I will add a check app state. So I want to check that the application is in a given state. And the element that I want to check is the new supplier button, right? So I want to check that the new supplier button is still is visible. So it's going to wait for it to appear, and then check that this equals true. Okay, so what this does is that it will check that the element appears, and if it doesn't, is there, and if it doesn't in 5 seconds, it's not going to throw an error, but it's going to, it will move to the next element, but then it will mark the fact that this element is not visible, and we'll see in a second how that works. So we've done that for the new supplier button, and we're going to do the same for the export CSV button. Okay, and then once if they're here, I'm going to click this new supplier button. Oops, I double clicked on it. So I will click on it. Okay, and once I click on it, this is when I want to check that all these other elements are present. Okay, so in a similar fashion, copy and paste this. I want to see that internal name is there. I want to see that external name is there, and let's add a save button as well. And you can imagine I could do all of these things over and over again, and then maybe I want to click the cancel button. Okay, for the app to go back to the initial state. Now, if I run this test case now, actually, let me go in debug and enable these highlight elements. Highlight elements, this option, what it's going to do is that as the automation, the test case is running, it will highlight the elements that it will interact with. So we will see it checking those elements one by one. Our application will open, it will check for the new supplier button, it will check for the export CSV button. You see them being highlighted here one by one, and then it will click on the new supplier button. It checks the new internal name, it checks external name, it will check the save button, and then it will just click the cancel button. Okay, after also identifying it. And now you see how this works. And if we look in the output, you can see here that for each one of these verify control attribute activities, we actually have the verification has passed. If one of these controls was not present on the screen, then you would see the verification fail actually. And then we can take this test case, you can upload it to Orchestrator, and then using Test Manager, you can schedule it to run. Let's say every morning at 5 a.m. you want to run multiple test cases that will go application by application and make sure that those apps are have not changed from an element point of view, so that you increase the chances of your automations to run just fine during the day. Now, these are a couple of things that I've shown you so far. So, we talked about enabling a modern design experience, object repository. Another thing about object repository is that once this was created, I can actually go and extract it as a UI library. And as I do this, this UI library can become a dependency for my project, and it can actually be shared with my team. What that means is that object repository elements can be reused not only within your existing automation, but also across multiple automations and across your team, of course. And on top of that, it can be versioned. Okay, so you can have a specific version of a set of UI elements used for one application, and then you can have a newer version of that library. So whenever you have new versions of applications, that works just fine. Good. So What else? I want to show you one more capability here around our table extraction functionality. For that, I will just add a new sequence, and in here, let's say what I want to do is extract this list of elements here. Let's assume exporting a CSV was not a functionality, and you actually want to take this and treat it as a table. And to do that, we've actually revamped our table extraction functionality. And as I do this, I will start adding new columns. Okay, so I will identify the elements that are part of that column. You can see it automatically identifying similar elements. I can actually help it. If this didn't work, I can actually click and tell it, these are some other examples of similar elements, so it knows how to do this. And I can add new columns if that's what I want. Again, it identifies all these elements, and I can go and also, for example, here I would work on identifying, this inner element of a table cell, right? So it goes even deeper into the data. And now I have 3 columns, I have 10 rows, I can preview the data, and you can see it here being extracted. And obviously, as I save this next, this is get extracted to a data table that I can later use however I want. The other thing I don't really have the time to show you is around our recorder functionality. This was also revamped. We have a completely new recorder now that works just fine. Yeah, obviously there's more, but these are just the highlights of what we have added in the latest version of our product around UI automation. Thank you.